everybody, and thank you for joining us for the third Idaho 5 for 5 Soil Health Roundtable, a virtual soil health workshop. This is our third and last one for this season. The next one will be coming up in the fall. So we've got some great folks with us today to talk to us about soil health related topics. Really excited for this group. What we'll do, as per normal with these, is we will have the presenters talk to us. They've got 5 minutes to present their subject in 5 slides or less. And then after presenters are done, we open it up for discussion. So if you have questions for presenters, please make a note of them and bring them up when the presenters are done. And then we'll leave that open discussion as kind of like it sounds. It's open for anyone and everyone that wants to chime in and ask questions. And we will, as long as that discussion is productive, we'll keep it going. So with that, well, any questions so far? I should be polite and ask that. My name is Shawn Nield. I'm the state soil scientist for NRCS Idaho, and helping me manage today, and a partner in crime, so to speak, is Courtney Cosdon, soil health educator with University of Idaho Extension, and she's helping out today, and she's presenting today too. So I'm looking forward to that. All right, first up we have Justin Clements, talking about soil dwellers, arthropods, and nematodes. And Justin, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, and if you want to give us a little background, that's great too.
Unmute myself. Can you hear me?
Sounds good.
Perfect. Great. Well, so I'm Justin Clements. I'm an entomologist with the University of Idaho. I'm an assistant professor out of the Parma Research Station. And really my focus is understanding and developing new integrated pest management tools for growers in the region, revolving around different insects and arthropod pests. So that's just a little bit of background about myself. And I've been with the university since 2020. So I'm going to go ahead and time myself to make sure I stay within the 5 minutes and put this in presenter view. Great. So today I'll be giving a very brief overview of soil dwellers and talk about different taxa that are found within the soil. They include different arthropods, nematodes, and a handful of variety of different species. When we think about these soil dwellers, we can really break them up into 2 different categories. They can be beneficial and they can also be harmful. We have different decomposers, predators, soil aggregators that really fall into beneficial taxa that really help the soil. And then we have different arthropods that can be destructive, they can destruct turf, and can be considered landscape pests. And when we think about insects specifically, 90% of our insect species spend a portion of their life in the soil. So soil and soil health is really important to different arthropod and insect species. And we think more about just soil in general. We can think about soil as a square yard and how many arthropods are found within those a square yard of soil. And it can range between 500 to 200 individual arthropods per square yard. So you can see how many different species are really living within your soils. So when we think about different beneficial traits, you have individuals that really shred organic material. So you have different arthropods that really break up organic material in the soil. And what they're doing is also allowing different bacteria and fungi to interact with that organic material. They're giving it more surface area. So they're incredibly important as far as decomposing organic material. You have enhanced soil aggregation. So different arthropods are really important for really breaking up the soil. So if we think about the topsoil, most topsoil that you'll ever see has passed through an arthropod or an earthworm. And as it passed through these different systems, they form different fecal pellets. And those fecal pellets are very nutritional and add nutrition back into the soil. And also, arthropods really provide the shape and the structure of soils. I know worms are not arthropods, but tunneling by worms really provides a lot of different structure. You have burrows by ants, you have tunnels by worms. And also, a big thing that can really help out is different arthropods can be used to control different problematic pest species found in the soil. So if we think about harmful arthropods that are found in the soil, we think about the destruction of crops. We think about landscape pests. We think about turf destruction. So from my really point of view, I study a lot of different agricultural pests. And soils can be areas where there's a lot of different feeding activity on crop structures and can be very problematic. So we've studied different California Perennis beetles, wireworms, the Colorado potato beetle. Colorado potato beetle doesn't actually feed within the soil, but it spends a long proportion of its life in the soil. And so it can be incredibly important when we think about pest management. When the insect themselves are in the soil, they can be hard to identify, and they can also be very hard to control. And you can control different soil pests with different insecticides and fumigants, but there's also a whole class of different biorational control methods, such as entomopathogenic fungi and entomopathogenic nematodes, that can be applied to soils and be used as pest control. So one of the major species of biorational control that's found in the soils are different entomopathogenic nematodes. And these nematodes can be commercially bought, and some of these nematodes are just free living within your soil. So what they are, they're going to be insect-specific parasites that are going to be reproduce and kill the insect. And so how this happens is that these nematodes will be free living within your soil. They'll enter the insect through different openings, such as the mouth and anus. Once they get into the insect, they will release bacteria that will actually kill the insect from septicemia. They'll reproduce in the insect. The insect will eventually lyse and then release these nematodes back into the soil. And so they've been really used in pest management effectively in multiple different systems, including black vine weevil, but they do require certain different parameters. They prefer sandy soils. They need a pH between 4 and 8. They can be killed through high and low temperatures, and they also need adequate soil moistures. And with that, that's exactly 5 minutes. So I will stop there and stop sharing my screen too.
Wow. Awesome,
Hopefully
stuff. Yeah, no, that was great. Entomopathogenic. I'm going to try working that into casual conversation later this week. But no, that's a super cool concept, and I'm sure that we'll have some questions about that later. So thank you, Justin. That was awesome. I'd like to ask folks if you wouldn't mind muting your computer until it's time for discussion. Just noticed that we had some background noise a couple times while Justin was on. So thanks for doing that. Next up, we have Reid Bowen. And Reid's going to talk to us about soil health and things that he has tried. And I'll let Reid introduce himself and give just a brief background if you'd like.
Okay, I'm Reid Bowen. I farm in the Heyburn Paul area north of Burley, and I'm also a crop consultant with Amalgamated Sugar. Started working with Amalgamated Sugar, doing crop help things, and kind of switched over to my farm and started using my farm as an experiment for different things. Farm with another Amalgamated employee, Aaron Firth, and he's big into this too, so we started this thing. We've tried many things. I couldn't put them all down that we've tried. I just put down some that I could think of real quick that have worked and some that haven't. The top ones have really, of course, of these things that we've tried. The bottom ones, a little less success. The pollinator strips, which has been a big thing that I've wanted to do, and we've tried about 4 or 5 times, has failed every time, whether due to planting or helpful neighbors who thought we had weeds and decided they would lay out all our flowering weeds for us. But the greatest success that we've had is no-till alfalfa, sugar beet, and small grains. I don't have many pictures of no-till small grains, but because of my work with sugar beets, and everybody's always interested in sugar beets, and I to help pioneer this with Amalgamated. This is some of the stuff we've had great success with. In some years had better yields under no-till sugar beets than we've had conventional beets. Everything on our now is no-till. We'd prefer not to have sugar beets and potatoes in our rotation, but where potatoes are king, we have, of course, rotate these crops in and try to always follow with a cover crop right afterwards, which has worked and hasn't worked, which I'll show you in a little bit. But we've also done interseeding, which you can see here. This is one that we seeded wheat with sugar beets.
Oh, got it.
We were going to go and we were trying to was going to take this wheat to thrashing, but it was just getting too big and decided to kill it out and let the beets grow. And then later came back and planted a cover crop again, which worked quite well. One of the things I forgot to mention is we farm a lot of blow sand, and so we have to keep it down. This field here particularly was a blow sand field. This worked really well and actually gave us our best field that we'd ever had doing that. Because of the crops, we've had a lot of late season cover crop, and we've had some varied success with this. Planted cover crops in October that have done excellent, and I've planted cover crops in September that haven't done anything due to the frost. This particular year after this corn, the cover crop thrived, and this was planted in October, and as you can see on the right hand side, the peas were germinating. That was just a week after planting and really did well, had a good cover crop that really worked well. But what we found is that you need to plant with a drill. Anytime that we've ever tried to plant cover crop with an air seeder, we have always had uneven stands that just the seeds would shift out and you wouldn't have a diverse cover crop across the whole thing. You never seemed to really get them up well. It seemed like we always had more volunteer than we had of what we were trying to plant. So we've gone to a no-till drill, which I recommend anybody, if you're going to plant a cover crop, get a drill. It just, air seeding doesn't seem to work. Even when planting alfalfa, it doesn't seem to work. Because we follow so many of these crops that do a lot of tillage, we've also done fall tillage and then put a cover crop in and then planted straight into the cover crop. We've had some great success with that. We've also had some great failures. Not this fall, but last fall, we following sugar beets and got a cover crop in, and then that huge frost came, killed everything. We went into no-till plant because there was no cover. We had horrendous winter annuals come through and affect the grain. We were still able to recover and have a good crop, but had a very thick stand of winter annuals through that crop. And then, sorry, I just had a brain fart there, sorry. But this is a few of the things that we've tried. Not everything. We've intercropped with alfalfa, which no-till alfalfa and intercropping I really like. But yeah, we've had some successes and some downfalls on many different things. And I think that's 5 minutes there.
Awesome. Thanks, Reid. That was a lot of good information in a real short period of time. And if nobody else does, when we're to the discussion part, I've got a few questions for you. So thank you. All right, moving right along. Let's see who we have next on the schedule. Liang, and G, if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly, please let us know how we do that properly. And G's going to talk with us about cereal pulse cropping systems, and I'll let her introduce herself.
Yeah, thank you, Shawn. You can call me she. Okay, so I can briefly introduce myself first. So I'm Liang from Aberdeen Research and Extension Center, and I have been working with University of Idaho for 7 years, a little bit more than 7 years. And I have a few intercropping study at the research station, and I'm going to introduce some of them today. So I can time myself. Okay. So this is our project on cereal pulse cropping systems. So in this project, we want to evaluate if we can integrate pulse crops in cereal production systems by rotations and intercropping systems. As you can, in this project, we also monitor water use efficiency, nitrogen use efficiency, and soil health. But the focus for my today's presentation will focus on crop yield. So as you can see in this table, we have 7 cropping system treatment, like a continuous. Hello.
I'm sorry, I'm not seeing your screen.
Oh, sorry, I forgot to share, I guess.
All right, there it is. We've got you now.
Okay, sorry about that. So this is our, the table shows us the 7 cropping system treatment. And, you know, like the first one, this is the control as the continuous barley as the control, and then barley rotating with lentil, chickpea, or pea, and then barley intercropping with lentil, chickpea, or pea. As you can see the differences along this 4-year experiment. And we also maintain the plots under full irrigation, like 100% ET and density irrigation conditions. And then the 50% ET, the water use is similar to the annual precipitation in the dryland area in southern Idaho, like Rockland. So in this slide, you can see how the plants look like in the field. Like this is the barley intercropping with lentil, and then barley intercropping with pea. Then is our first year. Then most of the crops are pulses, monocropping pulses. And then the first year we failed to establish chickpea plants because of the soil fungal diseases. And then in 2021, we applied seed treatment. Then we could establish chickpea plants. As you can see, this is chickpea intercropping with barley, and then pea and lentil intercropping with barley in 2021. So 2021 was a really hot and dry year, especially in the summer. So the plants didn't grow as well as 2020, but the yield was not as bad as I expected, but we are still processing the data. So in this slide, you can see the grain yield in 2021 under full irrigation and deficit irrigation conditions. And then under the full irrigation condition, the barley yield in the monocropping system was higher than the barley yield in the intercropping system. But under deficit irrigation were 50% ET, then the barley yield was not different. The monocropping barley yield was not different from the barley yield in the intercropping system. But For the intercropping system, the seeding rate was only a half as the monocropping, because as you can see in the previous slide, the intercropping plots, we only have barley half of the plant rows. Like for each plot, we have 14 plant rows, and then for the intercropping, that was only 7 rows of barley and 7 rows of pulses in the intercropping treatments. And of course, for the pulses, the intercropping treatment significantly decreased the yield in pulse yield under both irrigation treatment. So basically, the intercropping systems kind of benefit more for cereal production. So in 2021, besides our Aberdeen experiments, we also had 2 on-farm trials with growers at Rockland, which is dryland, and the Springfield, which is irrigated field. So as you can see, the results kind of similar to our results from Aberdeen. So the monocropping barley was slightly higher than the intercropping barley in the green yield, but the difference was not statistically significant. And then in Springfield, under irrigated condition, the barley yield was slightly higher than the barley yield under the intercropping systems. So as you can see, the results are consistent with our finding at Aberdeen in our field experiment. So besides the barley intercropping experiment, we also have a wheat intercropping system experiment, wheat intercropping with pea and canola. And in this project, we also include 2 varieties, like high nitrogen requirement, like a hard white wheat variety, and then the lower nitrogen requirement variety, like soft white wheat. At the same time, we are going to start a new project, the wheat and barley intercropping with pea as the organic transition systems. So in this new project, we are going to have more seeding rate, then we can have a better evaluation what kind of plant population composition benefit more to the cereal crops and which benefit more to the pulses. And you are welcome to our field days this summer. We have one late May, and then we have cereal field day in mid-July, and also our twilight tour. Thank you.
Thank you, Shi. That was great. And I'm wondering if I can talk you into pasting the field days information into the chat for folks. Yeah. I think there's probably several on this call that would take you up on that.
Yeah, thank you. I will do that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Good stuff. And I think that there's some opportunity for doing things a little differently maybe than what folks have done in the past. And so, yeah, I'm sure there's going to be some discussion on that. Courtney, we've got you up next. Are you ready to tee off?
I am ready.
Okay. And I'll let you introduce yourself.
Okay. All righty. We all good with the screen?
Yep, looks good.
Perfect. Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Courtney Cosdon. I am the new soil health extension instructor. I took over for Jackie, and I'm with U of I and NRCS. Today, I'm going to briefly talk to you about the Magic Valley Soil Health Project and give you an update. Okay, so this is Linda Schott's project. So I don't know a ton about this project. I'm still learning. But basically, kind of the big question behind this, and I'll give a brief intro or into the project in case you don't know already. The big question was, what does healthy soil look like in the Magic Valley? Because we have a lot of soil health testing and research has happened in the Midwest, but we don't really have numbers for Idaho. And so this project is really going to give us some great baselines for the Magic Valley. And so they have a lot of farmers signed on for this project, which of course means that thankfully we're able to look at a lot of different cropping rotations, a lot of different locations with different soil types, and then of course different management practices. So this is a map of the study area with all of the sites. It's a 5-year project, started in 2019. As of right now, we have an established 34 fields that are being assessed each year. And then since biological soil testing is pretty expensive, they're only doing it every other year. So it's on the odd years. So as of right now, we have 2021 data. So we have 2 years of biological data. So that's what I'm gonna talk to you about a little bit today. Now that we have 2 years of data, we can start pulling out some trends. And then in even years, they're just doing soil your undies, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard about. It's a really fun project. And then your standard chemical testing. And yeah, right now we're just gonna look at biological testing real fast. Okay, and I'm gonna give you, this is like a speed stats quick round. And so I'm just gonna give you a bunch of fast stats, and then we can ask questions and talk about these results with everybody instead of just me trying to deep dive into these results. And that being said, yeah, these are just, we haven't found anything, they haven't been analyzed for like statistical significance or anything yet. So keep that in mind. Okay, but the way all of my graphs are going to work through the rest of the presentation is we have just, so all of these, our bar charts are our averaged values across the years for each site. And so like, for example, we're looking at organic matter in this slide. Since we have organic matter is included in the chemical testing, we have 3 years of organic matter numbers. And so that's what these N values are up here, are the number of data points. So we can start, yeah, kind of looking at some trends associated with this. So with organic matter and fields that have been grazed, we're seeing higher organic matter levels or percentages in grazed fields. As for our tilled sites or our tillage, we are seeing, so with this we're seeing higher organic matter percentages with no-till or reduced till. With irrigation, we're seeing higher organic matter with our pivot systems. And then cover crop, we're not seeing, not so much difference there with organic matter in terms of cover crops, if people are using cover crops. So yeah, a lot of kind of trends that we would that are a little bit more predictable, right? That we're kind of seeing evidence and verification of here in the Magic Valley. Okay, as for total microbial biomass, we're seeing higher microbial biomass in grazed systems, higher microbial biomass in no-till or reduced till systems, and then higher microbial biomass in pivot systems, pivot irrigation. Okay, we're running out of time, so I'm gonna go a little faster. Okay, and then soil respiration. This is a measurement that's in part of the Haney suite of tests. So we're seeing, and yeah, soil respiration, so that's basically microbial activity. We're seeing higher microbial activity in grazed systems, higher in no-till or reduced. I thought this result was interesting, and we can talk about this later on, maybe higher microbial respiration in dryland systems. And then this result, yeah, higher microbial respiration in systems with no cover crops, interestingly enough. Okay, and last one, the Haney Soil Health Score is, yeah, kind of a measurement that combines soil respiration. So these, yeah, the Haney Soil Health Score is kind of closely tied to our soil respiration. So similar results here, higher Haney Soil Health Score in grazed systems, no-till systems, again, higher score in our dryland irrigated, just barely behind or in front of pivot, And then kind of, yeah, no difference here in the cover crop, whether we have cover crops or not have cover crops. Okay, and so I know that was a ton, so fast stats, like I said, but yeah, kind of the big takeaway is with our no-till or reduced till systems, as well as with grazing, we're seeing these higher levels of organic matter, microbial biomass, microbial respiration, and our soil health score. And that's what I.
Excellent. Thanks, Courtney. It was really good. Quite a few graphs to take in, but I think there was some kind of common themes there that folks were probably picking up on. All right, and so to round out our presenters today, Shilo Bingham is going to talk to us about adaptive grazing and what he's learned with that. Shilo, do we have you ready to go?
Yep, let's see if I can get it on here. You see my screen?
Just came in, yep, looks good.
Okay. Well, appreciate the opportunity to be on here today. I've listened to a lot of speakers. Guess a little background here. Shilo Bingham, I live in Blackfoot, Idaho. I work for Simplot. I do a lot of their technology for Southeast Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming. On the side here, I've been doing some rotational grazing. Just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the experiences we've had here. So this is a map of our farm. I am third generation on this farm. My grandpa bought this land in the early 60s. My dad purchased it from him in the late 80s, and I took over in 2018 running the farm. Currently, I custom graze 80 to 100 head of mixed beef cows there. And got a picture of my family there. It's the reason I do this. So in 2018, I kind of just focused on the pivot. Some of the area was a little harder to manage, and so we just divided the pivot in half. With an electric fence, I put in a water line down the center. Started dividing into anywhere from 1 to 2 acre paddocks. Some of the results there we saw, I show a picture of my kids here. Grass was just amazing. Almost waist high. When these kids were standing up, I had a hard time seeing them. As I pulled the soil samples that fall, so I started out in 2017, and this is what our typical Idaho over here looks like. We were 1.15. Noticed an improvement within that 1 year. So I knew I was heading on the right path. 2019, we continued to manage the grazing under the pivot. I added the back area behind the pivot. I was able to work with the neighbor there and get some water to that area. 2020, we started playing with some higher stock densities. I was moving cows every 3 to 4 hours when I could. Saw some amazing results there. This picture on the right here, this was actually an area that I had some pigs in. They had kind of destroyed that area. I just went in and seeded it by hand, and it came back really well. But with this high stock densities, we were able to really bring that area back into production. The only drawback to it that I saw was just don't have the time always to go out there and move cows that often. Everything else is just awesome the way that it rebounded. And this is when I really started paying attention. The soil test results that came back in 2019, our organic matter had jumped to just over 6. And then in 2020, we were at 6.8. The soil was definitely turning a darker color. It was really well aggregated. I could go out there and dig in it early spring when things are typically frozen solid. And I apologize, I actually have 7 slides on here. I wasn't able to get, with so many pictures on there, I wasn't able to get it into 5. 2021, we were having such awesome results, we had to have a frustrating year. I tried to extend into the west side of the canal there to start rotational grazing back there as well, change my water system. And then we had the 100-degree weather, and I just could not keep water to the cows through that water line. So I ended up opening up the canal in places and lost some of the ability to move cows around. Soil organic matter this past fall had dropped back to 5 because of some of the frustrations that I had there. But moving forward, the guy that actually brings his cattle on is helping fund putting a pivot on there. All but an acre and a half of that will be irrigated with either that 2 pivots or the hand lines. I'm really going to open up some opportunities and bring a lot of additional grass. As you can see here, we've had a lot of areas with the flood that just don't get anything. It's going to allow for me to be able to set up the water system in a central area. We're looking at purchasing some timed gates, so I don't have to be out there as often, but can start to manage some of these areas. And the most important thing, the guy that brings his cattle over here every year is just amazed at how well these cattle look and how good how much weight they gain. He's more than willing to pay more per head, and he's helping invest in a pivot so that we've got more ground for these cattle to graze. Just a side note, I do on the Simplot side there, I do some soil health consulting here. I've been consulting with a few growers over in Wyoming. Anybody that's willing to start down this path, I am more than willing to help direct them with that. So with that, that is all I have.
Wow, great presentation, Shilo. There's all sorts of good stuff going on there for you and your operation. That's really good to hear. I'm glad that's working out that well for you. So, but like you said, right, there's always a frustrating year. I think Reid had that theme was part of some of his comments too. So folks, this is a general discussion at this point, and we invite your questions. I think there may be a couple sitting in the chat. Well, there's one from Marlon. Shilo, are your timed gates a batch latch opener?
So I've looked at the bat latch. There's another style too that I wish I could remember what they were called. Anyway, it's a little cheaper, little different design that I'm looking at. Look like it might work a little bit better for what I've got.
And the virtual fencing, the remotely controlled cow collars. Any more info on that? I know we had discussed that a little bit. But is that something
yeah, I haven't gotten any further with that. So,
I wonder if that's something that that we'll catch on in the future. Are there other ways to manage the cows that are less time consumptive? I think those two, the timed gates and the virtual fencing, are probably big deals, but I don't know. Maybe other folks have other ideas.
Well, you know, to be honest too, the guy that comes over and checks his cows, he comes over about once a week and just pulls up by the road and kind of watches them, but he knows right where they are. He doesn't have to go wander all over the pasture to try to find 100 head of cows. They're all together, and it's a lot faster for him to check on them.
Yeah. And we've got a couple more. Steve Schuyler asks, he says 750,000 pounds is Gabe Brown type numbers. Shilo, what's the composition in your pasture species?
Oh, a lot of cool seasons. I've tried to put some warm season grasses into there, and I drilled some in one year. Got some of it to come up, some of it didn't come up. But mainly just I've got a lot of bluegrass, brome, orchard grass, Obviously, there's a couple of different varieties of clover in there. Always a few thistles too.
Sure. I would think the way that that's going for you, questions like Steve's ought to probably coming from some of your neighbors too. Barry Delkey wants to know what the organic nitrogen per acre values are, and he's asking if that's common mallow growing where the pigs rooted out the pasture, and is that a concern?
No, and yeah, and then they rooted some holes there that I didn't ever fill back in, but they're slowly, and the cows are kind of working it slowly back in.
Yeah, I know that common mallow has been an issue for Barry, and I'm pretty sure that's why he asked, is he's figuring out how to deal with some areas of that. We've got a question for Courtney on this soil test conducted on parcels with cover crops. Were those full season cover crops or seeded in the fall after a cash crop?
Right. Like I said, I don't know a ton about this project yet, so I'm still learning about it. I'm trying to pull up the Excel document with the farmer survey information. I was wondering if I could figure that out really quick.
And Steve's on. Steve might have a comment on that too.
I don't think there were any full season cover crops. I think they were all seeded after the cash crops.
Oh, just a general message from Brad Johnson with TNC to everyone here. For folks that use Facebook, he says he started a group that is named Idaho Soil Health and invites folks to join and start some conversations there. Thanks for that, Brad.
Yep, I was going to try to announce it sometime during the day. I also have a quick question for G. I'm curious on those intercrops. I'm curious to see if they were planted all together instead of in alternate rows, if you would see more of a root interaction, a positive root interaction, and yields would be higher for both crops.
You mean like in the mix?
Yeah. A lot of intercrops that we see in other areas, they're all just planted together and not in rows. So I'm curious if there would be a difference in yield there.
So I think it should work like the slide in the trial at Rockland, that was planted in the mix.
Okay.
Yeah. So for research purposes, we want to plant them alternate rows. We want to see, let's see, because when we have two crops together, there are different kind of relationship, maybe competition, maybe facilitation. But when we plant them separately, we thought it could be easier for the harvest or easier for us to conduct the research. But for sure, we are going to do some comparisons between alternate rows and the mix. And I know a grower from Soda Springs, he planted alternate rows a few years ago, chickpea and winter, I think it's winter wheat together in alternate rows. He just modified his planter.
Okay.
I had a question for she also, and my brain was trying to assimilate your slides, and I'm not sure if I fully understood what I was seeing there, but I was going to ask you, is there an implication that in short water years that intercropping could make really good sense?
Based on the results of our experiments in 2020, we're still processing the data in 2021, and also the two on-farm trials in 2021. Based on what we have seen, it seems like the intercropping, the barley yield was similar in dryland or deficit irrigation conditions was similar to monocropping barley, but for the intercropping barley, the seeding rate was only a half of the monocropping barley. So we kind of think it's kind of promising under drought stress conditions. Maybe each plant, each barley plant, they probably produce more tillers and well develop all the tillers, take advantage of probably the space and the resources from pulses. We are going to continue the experiment. Like, as you can see, we're going to have the experiment for 4 years because it is something new, and the result, we feel kind of surprised when we saw the results, like same yield with half seeding rate and adapted irrigation. We want to be sure this kind of result is consistent over years and different projects, and then we will make recommendations to growers.
I think it's exciting. It's exciting work that you're doing, and we're looking at some crops and some for Southern Idaho would be a little bit alternative, if you will. But in my mind anyway, that widens out our diversity or potential diversity in cropping systems for Southern Idaho. And so very exciting stuff. Thank you.
Yeah, another thing, we compare the rotations and the intercropping. So based on the references, we read the kind of, when we have the two crops together, the cereal and the pulses or legumes, it kind of push the legumes to produce more nitrogen, because they have a kind of drainage or depletion from the cereal crops. When they use more nitrogen in the soil, probably kind of push or force the legumes to produce more. So we want to prove it's correct. That's why we have the control, the continuous barley for 4 years. Probably we'll see the yield decrease, but we want to see if we don't, for the field experiment at Aberdeen, we didn't apply any fertilizers. Maybe we'll apply some phosphorus or potassium, but we didn't apply any nitrogen, and it's not in our plan.
Wow, that's pretty cool. I've got another question for you from Cameron Williams. It says, was any evaluation made to look at economic return per acre on the intercrop test?
Yes, so it's not in the barley pulse project I introduced, but it's in our new organic transition project. That one is a bigger project funded by USDA NIFA, and we have economics on it. So he will give us more data analysis for the input and output from different cropping systems. And we also invited 3 growers to work with us for on-farm trials.
Okay. Good. And I would encourage folks to take note of the field days and find out even more by going to those. This is a really long question. I've got another question that came in, and this is posed to everyone. It says, I'm thinking about Courtney's presentation and data and Shilo's presentation. Number 1, regarding the Magic Valley Soil Health Project, the soil organic matter levels and respiration levels in the cover crop systems is surprising. Is this a function of less than desirable cover crop stands? In other words, difficulty integrating high performing cover crops into existing rotations, or anomalous data? And 2, thinking about Shilo's soil organic matter results, is it perhaps more advantageous than implementing poor performing cover crops in existing cropping systems to modify or extend existing rotations to include perennial grazed pastures into the crop rotation? That's all in the chat. That's a lot, Nick. You've got us going here. If folks maybe could look at that question and offer up some ideas for Nick on this, and I'll zip it for a while. So we don't have to hear me speak anymore.
I bet Cameron would have answers to both of those questions. But he's being shy.
Hey, this is Marlon. I'll take a crack at part of it. And maybe I'm not getting the whole question, but the second half of it talks about including perennials. I think anytime you can include a perennial grass pasture system in your cropping rotation will certainly increase soil health function of the soil.
That makes sense. Brad, did you have other thoughts too?
No, just that I do agree with Nick that maybe those cover crops in those tests were underperforming cover crop. We saw that on Todd's. We did see a lot of benefit the earlier years when his cover crops didn't do well, but last year it seemed to have a fairly good big effect on the soil. We haven't tested it yet, but just by looks in the shovel test, it looked better.
Yeah, I think based on those results that we saw, we could argue that reduced disturbance and grazing were as or more important than anything, really. And I wonder if, I think sometimes we get to thinking about soil health, and cover crops are often part of the equation of how we address soil health principles, and our brains kind of go there without considering the importance of other things that can go along with them, like diversity and crop rotation and reduced disturbance and so on. But yeah, that is interesting.
Hey, Shawn, could I add something? This is Travis.
Yeah, you go for it.
You know, one of the things that I've noticed in a lot of different things that we've done, when you're doing something like grazing a pasture like that, the organic matter that is being grown, it's a season-long thing, and you're growing a lot of biomass. Even though you're putting it through a cow, it's still most of it comes back out of the cow. And you know, when you're talking about a cover crop that's a very short, window of opportunity, right at the end of the growing season after full crop's grown, you're not growing near as much biomass as you are when you can grow a season long. That's just my thoughts there, anyway.
I think that's a good point. And the other thing about having the livestock, and that the nitrogen that passes through those animals, most of that comes out in the form of urine, right? So that if they're not on that property, you're not getting that. So that's an advantage of having that versus just adding like manure or compost, I think. And that obviously fuels more plant growth too. So there could be something to that as well. Cameron.
I would also take a stab that the carbon to nitrogen ratio on cover crops is probably a lot more nitrogen than carbon in those systems that are short season cover crops. So they're not building organic matter near as fast. And the time that the cover crops are being grown is such a short window. But I'm shocked to see organic matters change as rapidly as they have in both examples. So it looks promising to me.
For like in Shilo's case, seeing that organic matter change.
Yeah, that's a pretty rapid change in organic matter. So
yeah, I thought those were impressive numbers too. And yeah, kudos to Shilo and his ongoing work with the cattle and the adaptive grazing. Yeah, I had some questions for Reid. Reid, you had talked about, like, one of the major tips that I picked up from you was that was to use a no-till drill, if at all possible. Other methods just had not worked well for you. And I guess my question is that a major obstacle for a lot of folks if because they're not cheap, right? And are they widely available if a person wanted to lease one or have someone else do the work for them?
Well, I guess around Manicaja area, of course, the soil districts bought 2 of them and they're for rent. That's how we got started. Yeah, I think it's a big thing because when you we were trying to just save money and be cheap and fertilize and spread the cover crop all at the same time to save a pass. And so I do think it is an obstacle. We've tried regular drills and it just wasn't able to get through the chaff and everything. But they are available to rent. We do a little bit of custom work. We don't have that much time to do a lot. So it is an obstacle. It's a big obstacle, but it's one that makes a big difference. To have a grain to plant with a drill versus another way. Or I've seen some guys use vertical till machines with air boxes. That seems to work as well. I think the biggest problem is your seed to soil contact and just getting through residue and getting everything to make it worthwhile for that cover crop to grow. So.
Right. Yeah, that seemed like a pretty big deal after based on the comments that you were making. Yeah, thanks for the answer. That was my key question based on the notes that I took. So Brad, when's the TNC going to get into the no-till drill business?
Yeah, that's a good question. We're still working on getting an interseeder with the Dairy Association.
I knew you were working on that.
Yeah, I'd like to get a good no-till drill that we could pull around, but we'll see.
I had a question before we lose Justin Clements' interest here. Let's bring it back to talking about soil critters. And I'm wondering who's using the entomopathogenic biocontrols and what if you've seen that deployed successfully and or how folks might get more information on that.
Yeah, of course. So it's interesting. So specific nematodes are specific to different insect pests. And there's a lot of different companies that sell different nematode species. So there's bioorganics, there's biocontrols. And so if you start typing in, biorational control of different soil pests with nematodes, it brings up a handful of different sources. And one of the big pests that they're really used to control are black vine weevil. And we've had some growers and hops work on using them to control black vine weevil. They are effective. They have to be used right. They're a living system. So understanding the dynamics is really important. The best thing to really do is to work with some of these different commercial vendors to figure out what is available, what pests they can target, and figuring out a system to put them out at. And they can be applied through multiple different systems through like drip or different irrigation or other ways you can put it into the field. So the best thing if you're interested is starting to reach out to different companies. They can be a little bit expensive, but if there isn't options, right, they can work. So
I think it's pretty interesting stuff. Have you been on site where they've deployed these and then kind of monitored results and seen how effective they can be or not, I guess, and
yeah. So we actually had a project to try to control California Prienus beetles with nematodes. And so we collected a bunch of California Prienus beetle larvae and started screening them against different nematodes. And to be honest, it has to be the right nematode for the right pest species, because in our case, we couldn't actually figure out what to infest that larva with. So there's been quite a few studies that have done it and understood it, and they can be relatively effective. So yes, they can be, but again, it's timing, putting out the right application, and having the right species. So there is some thought that has to go into the whole process.
Absolutely. Thanks. Yeah, it's interesting stuff. Anything for pests with like pale cyst nematode for spuds? Has there been any work with them and other I guess you know a thing or two about nematodes. Is there any sort of biocontrol for the bad actor nematodes?
Yeah, I mean, so you have the beneficial nematodes, right? That can be insect specific. And then you have nematodes that are going to be plant specific and predating on plants and causing a problem. I've really not looked in that too much. We have a professor here, Sod, who just focuses his whole career around that. So I've really kind of focused on trying to kill the insect part. So, but there is quite a bit about other things that can be put out into the field as far as fumigants, like Mocab EC can kill some nematode species. And you can monitor nematode species by bringing soils in. Sod runs a soil lab where he looks for nematodes. So it's important to understand what's there for sure. So
Cool, thank you.
I had a couple answers to some of the questions. I found the farmer surveys, and this is just from 2020. But as for the cover crops, if they were seeded after cash crop, some pretty diverse answers as you would expect. Yeah, a lot after the cash crop, but then actually a lot that were interseeded. People are planting every fall except following beets, which is kind of the big problem that we talk about a lot. Immediately following grain harvest, they're planting cover crops, more interseeding in corn. So yeah, a lot of diverse answers with that question. And then as for the were all the irrigated fields no-till? No. A lot of it's probably pretty, I'd say people are tilling more often than not. People, yeah, irrigated fields are tilling, and then there's a couple people with dry land systems who aren't tilling. So yeah, pretty mixed answers there as well for Marlon's question.
Okay. And it looks like there's a few other things that have landed in the chat. Discussion from between Dan Wilcox and Nick Waters talking about full season cover crop. Daniel Wilcox was saying full season cover crops may have a better response for soil health, but the forage income, or excuse me, the foregone income from a cash crop makes it less economical in the short term. That's a good point. And Nick was saying in response that that's what I'm wondering, to make it pencil when you're looking at sacrificing a cash crop for a full season cover crop. Do the economics of meat production and grazing leases, et cetera, do more to stimulate soil organic matter, soil health, while offering a return on investment? I can think of at least one person that might have an idea on a thought or two on that discussion. We heard from him earlier today. Shilo, any comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, if you can make a full season cash crop pencil out, it, you know, as far as cattle there, I mean, you're getting cash back from having them on the land. If cattle do well, guys tend to pay pretty decent on that. So I guess it's probably, I would guess, you know, as far as low inputs and everything, you'd probably be pretty comparable to maybe raising a barley crop.
Are there folks in your area, Shilo, that that have covers that where folks are using livestock to graze covers that are not necessarily on their ground?
Not a whole lot here in this area.
Because I know there's some people that are interested in cover crops, but and then hooking them up with folks that would like to graze those cover crops seems like that's a communication mismatch in some areas.
It is, and you know, unfortunately, just about any guy that grazes cattle, when you talk to them, they are always looking for more land, more places to put cattle. If you know, if there was a means where we could get those two together and benefit everybody, I'd say livestock's always tends to be the last one that people implement on those 5 or 6 principles of soil health. But I think, you know, just from my own experience, just having the cattle on the land there, the microbials that they put through saliva, urine, everything there, I just think they really stimulate the growth of any kind of microbial activity down in the soil. I think we can get a lot more benefit from that versus some of the other things that we might implement. And they, for some reason, it tends to be the last one, probably just because it's dealing with cattle or other animals tend to be a little more difficult.
Sure.
We need Tinder for grazers.
And for grazers. That's some soil health humor right there. Oh, I missed it. I missed a question. I'm sorry. This is from Marlon. What was the bushel per acre yield of the barley plots? Oh, we might have lost she. Apparently so. Okay.
Her data was reported in some metric unit, which I didn't calculate in my head. I was just wondering if anybody caught that or calculated it.
I did not.
I got a question. Reid, you found this Idaho Soil Health group. Nate Matlack was having troubles. How did you find it, Reid?
You just typed in Idaho Soil Health in the search on Facebook and it came right up.
Okay.
I typed it in and was having a hard time finding it too, Brad.
I wonder what I need to do to make it easier to find.
Any other questions or discussion points today?
I should mention that piggybacking off of the Facebook, I'm hoping to have on U of I's website, we're going to have soil health page soonish, as soon as I can finish getting everything together. And we're going to have a calendar on there of all the events, soil health related events, including as many as we can, conferences, field days, workshops, what have you. And so I'm hoping that we can get that on the ground or running at the end of March, which I think should be easily done. So so we're slowly gathering more ways to share information. And I wonder if the Facebook group would be good for connecting people with livestock or with cover crops, and connecting people that way if they have cover crops they want grazed, and that sort of a thing. And also, I should put a plug. I'm going to start, I'm contacting people we're going to continue the virtual field day projects this year. So if anybody wants to be a movie star and show us some interesting things that you're doing on your field, please contact me and we can continue to share information and share soil health practices that way.
All right. And Steve, did you want to say anything about a potential soil health field day? I think Brad might be in on that too in the near future.
Well, we don't have anything put together yet, but we are definitely planning on one. I am going to contact you, Brad, soon, and so we can visit about that. But yes, as far as I know, we are.
So yeah, and I kind of knew about this too. So sorry to put you on this spot, Steve, but yeah, sooner rather than later. And even though we're done with the 5 for 5s for the year, the folks that received the emails about them, I will be sending out a few more emails over the next few months as things like this come up. We'll want to share out links to this recording and links to the website that Courtney mentioned. So we'll do what we can to keep folks involved in other things that are coming up. So anyone else with any announcements, proclamations, confessions, or otherwise that for the good of the group before we wrap up today? I think we had some fantastic presenters on. Really enjoyed the content today. I look forward to keeping these going in the fall. We'll have a link to post for the recording here, and we are also posting in the description of these the timeline for the different topics and presenters, so that you can go straight to a topic of your choice. And when that link comes out, that's an opportunity for you too to check out any of these other 5 for 5s or virtual soil health field days that maybe you haven't checked out. A lot of good content in there. Okay, well, with that, if we don't have any other comments or discussion, we'll wrap it up for today. And as always, I really appreciate everyone's involvement with this, and especially the presenters. Just a fantastic job today. Thanks everyone for attending. We really appreciate you.